Jessica and Jake were born in the same maternity hospital. It just so happened that the baby girl was abandoned by her mother, and when Jake's mother was discharged with him and they passed by the room with the rejects, for some reason the woman's eyes were fixed on Jessica. "Oh, she's so pretty," the woman said. "Really nice. I don't know why her mother gave her up," the nurse said. "Can I take her?" The woman looked at her. "Of course, as long as the girl is not given to the orphanage, you can do all the paperwork here with us." "I just need to talk to my husband," said Jake's mother. "He's here. I'll be right back." The woman ran away, and the nurse went to get the head doctor. She told him everything. They went down together and waited. "Honey, can you imagine? Jake and I are going to discharge, and there's a little abandoned girl. Let's take her." She looked at her husband and couldn't understand his emotions. "Sure, if you want to. I thought I had a son. And it turned out to be both a son and a daughter," the man said cheerfully. They went into the hospital together, filled out and signed all the necessary documents, and the three of them were on their way home. All the relatives turned their fingers at their temples. No one understood why the two of them were such a burden. But the woman and the man loved their children. They grew up like twins. They went to the same kindergarten, then went to the same class, always together, one for the other. When the boys were in 7th grade, Jake realized that he liked Jessica, that he would like a wife like her. But the boy understood that it was his sister. In 9th grade, Jake had his first taste of beer with the boys. When he saw Jessica following him, he told the boys that she was his future wife. Everyone, of course, was surprised, including the girl. When they got home, the father called his son into the kitchen to talk. He started reprimanding him for bad behavior and other things. "And in general," said the father, "it's time to find a girlfriend." "I found one a long time ago," Jake grinned. "And who is she?" His parent was surprised. "Jessica." Dad just sat down in his chair. He didn't understand what was going on. Immediately, the other half of the family was called into the kitchen. "Can you imagine? He fell in love with his sister," the husband said to his wife. "Guys, get out of the kitchen. I need to talk to Daddy," the mother said quietly. Jessica and Jake went out. In the hallway, the girl looked at him in a peculiar way. She had never looked at him that way before. And in the kitchen, her parents were talking. "Let's tell them the truth. If they're attracted to each other, let them be together," said her mother. "Come on. They grew up in the same family, they're relatives," shouted the father. "You and I also grew up together. We sat on the same pot. We've been living together for years," contradicted the woman. "Well, as you wish. You do not think that you will make it worse now," still doubted the father. "Guys, come in," called the mother from the kitchen. "Dad, and I want to tell you something important. Maybe this information will change your whole life, and maybe ours too," the mother began intriguingly. "Come on, just say it." Jake couldn't help himself. "You're not brother and sister," the woman blurted out. "What?" Jake and Jessica shouted together. Maybe that wasn't what everyone meant by the question. "Yes, we adopted Jessica when she was 3 days old," the father said. "Why didn't you say anything before? You could have told me right away," the girl cried. She ran back to her room, and Jake came in to see her. "I don't know, but now we can be together," the boy rejoiced. "Come on, what are you talking about? Yes, I love you, but as a friend and a brother," the girl was still crying. "I'll get there, and you'll love me like a man." With these words, the boy went out. The mother came into the room to her daughter, and she sat down beside her and embraced her. "Anything happens in life, and if you were destined to meet, and we prevented it. Now it's up to you to make a choice. Go to sleep. It's better in the morning." Jessica pretended to be asleep, but she was in such a state of mind that she wanted for nothing. In the morning, when she had to go to school, she didn't know how to do it. After all, Jake would go with her, and for now, she couldn't even talk to him. "Jessica, are you packed?" the boy in the next room shouted. "Yes, now," the girl said confidently, though she didn't feel like it at all. They walked along the road in silence, each thinking about something else. When Jessica was asked in class, she hesitated, Jake prompted. They continued to live in the same apartment, but something had changed. Jessica was determined to find her real mother and find out from her why she had left her. The girl didn't know where to begin. She turned to the internet with the question. Several answers came up, but the one she liked best. She was offered a company that could help her in this matter. By this time, the young men had already enrolled in institute, as usual, in one. Jake wasn't settling down. He was wooing Jessica like a girl. She saw that care and concern. So when Jake proposed to her during her sophomore year, she decided she couldn't find a better husband, and she said yes. The guy was so happy about it. "And I told you I'd get you, and you'd be my wife," he exulted. "Oh, come on," the girl said embarrassedly. The wedding was a simple college wedding, though her parents had offered to make it real, but Jessica didn't want to stress them out. She had to start looking because she couldn't wait any longer. She contacted the company that was looking for people after all. A guy came to the meeting. He was young, but he told her so much. That they had helped so many people, Jessica believed him. The young man's name was Peter, and he wanted some information about the woman to be found. But Jessica couldn't say anything. She called her mother, but even she only knew which maternity hospital the girl was born in. Peter said that would be enough for now, because that's where all the birthing records are kept. They started to say goodbye, but Jessica didn't want to leave. The girl asked the boy to take her with her. She wanted to be present for everything that was going on. Peter shrugged and agreed. He was pleased with the girl. They drove to Jake and Jessica's hometown, and it turned out that Peter was from there too and found the right establishment there. There was a young girl sitting at the front desk. "We need information on a woman who had a baby with you a few years ago and then left the baby behind," Peter began formally. "Oh, you know how many of those we've had." The nurse waved her hand. "We know the day of the year. Can we see the paperwork for that time?" Kept up with the guy. "Then you need to go up to the head doctor." The receptionist indicated where to go. Jessica and Peter went up, found the head doctor, and asked him the same question. The woman looked at them, realized her daughter wanted to find her mother. She shrugged, doubtful that they would find anything, and led them into the file room. As Peter and Jessica went through the files, they learned that 5 women had given birth that day at once. 3 of them had gone home with their children, 1 child had been adopted immediately, and the other had been placed in an infant home. Peter photocopied both women's papers. It had their last name, date of birth, and city of residence. There was no street or house. "Strange," Peter muttered. "Nothing strange. Maybe they came to the maternity hospital just to give birth and leave their baby there," Jessica said with a sigh and anger. "Okay, that's more than enough. Let's go." The boy waved her off. In a day he had gone through everything he could. He found out where the women lived now, what they were doing. Jessica insisted they go to their place. In the first apartment, which was well furnished, they met a well-groomed woman. She listened to them and cried. Yes, she could barely speak. "I did it, but I was only 15 at the time, and I was afraid. But after a while I came to my senses, and my parents found out about it. They helped me, and I got my baby out of the orphanage." Peter and Jessica looked at each other, said goodbye, and went to another address. Here was where the big disappointment awaited them. In front of them, the young people saw a barn of some kind. A seemingly young, but very bad-looking woman came out of it. Peter stopped her and asked the same question. She looked at him frightened. "So, that was 10 years ago. Who remembers that? Get out of here," she snarled. "So Jessica, she remembers everything." The guy pointed at the girl. The woman smiled with a toothless mouth that made Jessica cringe. She took Peter by the sleeve and they went from there. They stopped at some cafe and decided to get something to eat. "It's a good thing she turned me down," Jessica said. "Imagine how I'd live now." "Yes," was all Peter could say. He looked at her and took her hand. It was obvious that he got to know Jessica better after all he had been through. "Let's go to my place," he said. "I can't, I'm married," she answered. "I can't, I'm married," she said. "But we can forget about it for a while, because I think you like me too." He pressed her hand. "Come on, I'll tell you an interesting marriage story," Jessica laughed. When they arrived at Peter's, he had someone. The guy wasn't too surprised. He told Jessica that it was an acquaintance coming to set up the computer. When they entered the room, Jake was sitting at his desk, fixing the tech. No one understood anything, especially Peter. Jake jumped out of his seat. He grabbed Jessica's arm. "What are you doing with that?" He nodded his head in the direction of his adversary. "Why? We live in a different town, don't we?" Jessica answered question for question. "My family's done everything for you, and you do this to us." "With who? With you? I've done nothing wrong to my parents, nor have I done anything wrong to you. I told you I couldn't handle it. Here, I met a decent guy. You've been around my whole life, keeping me from breathing. And now I'm out of your clutches. Goodbye." Jake threatened some kind of revenge, but there was nothing he could do. He left, and that was the end of their story. Jessica visits her parents often. She's not angry with them anymore, and she thanks them for not leaving her alone back then.